Hello, Grumpy Old Fart here. I'm doing a series of videos on UFOs, and the reason I'm doing it is because this announcement by the Navy that their pilots actually videoed and photoed real UFOs. Now we have to kind of give credence to some of these other reports that we've seen over the years, and I've done a couple of videos on some very compelling UFO reports. But you can't really talk about UFOs without talking about the UFO abductees. For those of you who don't know, there are people who claim to have been abducted by beings from these UFOs. And before, people thought they were just crazy or maybe they're on drugs or whatever. But with this announcement from the Navy, you have to go back and look at this again. I'm going to start with this one. It's the first, as far as I know, the first real compelling UFO abduction case. Betty and Barney Hill from 1961. This was a couple, an interracial couple. He was a 39-year-old black man. She's a 41-year-old white woman. Respectable people, good people, intelligent people, solid, upstanding people. They went into Canada on vacation, and they were on their way back home, and they were in New Hampshire, and it was about 10 p.m., and they're driving along and see a star which seemed to move erratically. And so he told Betty about it, and they both kept tabs on it as they drove along. Then they saw it a little closer. Had multicolored lights, rows of them, rows of windows on it, and it was moving in a very unusual manner. He got out, he stopped the car and got out and went and looked at it with a pair of binoculars and saw it was no star. He could make out different colors of lights, like I said, multiple rows of windows, and he could see people inside the ship. It was a strange flying object being piloted by people. The next thing you know, they were being frightened by this thing, so they jumped back in the car and they took off. And they were driving like mad trying to get away from this thing. And they were driving just a couple of minutes, and it turns out they were 35 miles down the road. They had experienced something called missing time, which is very prevalent in these cases. You're doing something that should take a few minutes, and it's 3 hours later, or you're doing something that you're driving for an hour-long drive and it only takes 5 minutes and you're there, things like that. I mentioned in another video the New Mexico Rangers have a video on YouTube you can check out. They report this thing too. The guy's driving from point A to point B and it's supposed to take several hours and he gets there real quick in like 30 minutes or something. But anyway, back to this story. When they got back home, they were tired and they went to bed. The next day, Betty called her friend and told her about it. Her sister Janet and told her about it. And Janet said, "Hey, you got to call the Air Force and tell them about it." And so she did. And there was a Major Paul W. Henderson. He told her that the UFO was also confirmed on their radar. So it was corroborated. Okay. They had 2 hours of missing time that they couldn't account for. Total of 2 hours of missing time. They talked to Dr. Benjamin Simon, and this guy's a psychiatrist and a neurologist, and he is well known in his field. He said basically he put them under regressive hypnosis, and they recounted the events. Their automobile had stalled on the road. The UFO had landed in the middle of the road, and alien beings came to their car, carrying both Betty and Barney to the UFO. They were subjected to various medical and scientific tests. Before the aliens released them, they were hypnotized in order to keep their capture a secret. So the aliens had planted hypnotic orders in their head to keep it secret. These aliens were bald, about 5 foot tall, grayish skin, pear-shaped heads, and slanting cat-like eyes. And apparently this description very much described what would become known as the Greys. And if you're not familiar with that, it's prevalent in the UFO community. I'm kind of a buff, but I never really put much stock in it until I just thought it was great stories until recently. Now, this has become a very prevalent case in the UFO community because whenever other people claim to be abducted, they compare it to this case. This is a very groundbreaking case because you've got all the elements of modern UFO abductions. You've got missing time. You've got the aliens did medical experiments on them, taken aboard the spaceship, and with these medical experiments, procedures of some kind. Skin samples, hair samples, nails had taken. Betty had gynecological testing. Barney reluctantly revealed that they had taken sperm samples. So there's medical experimentation going on. Again, I'm not saying this did or didn't happen. I'm not taking a stand on this. But with this Navy announcement, we have to lend credence to this stuff. And if it is happening, people need to be made aware of it because it could happen to anybody. This is an average couple driving down the road. Excuse me. This is an average couple driving down the road in the middle of the night. 10 o'clock at night this happened. And if it could happen to them, it could happen to anybody. Barney Hill is a postal worker. Betty Hill worked with in child welfare development. Child welfare department, excuse me. I mean, these are about as average people as you can get in America. It could happen to them, it could happen to anybody. So, again, I'm not saying that this did or didn't happen, but their case is well documented with doctors and scientists. The craft that they said they saw was confirmed on the radar by the Air Force. So, this is about as good an abduction case as it gets, and it's one that other cases are compared to for reference. So, it's a standard case. It's the standard for alien abduction cases. And these are good people. They're not liars. They're well respected in their community. They're not kooks. Okay? So, you can't talk about UFOs without talking about abductions, and this right here is the standard of abductions. So, you folks have a good day. God bless one and all.